Tijmen BLANKEVOORT, and I'll be moderating the session for today. As a very short introduction of myself, I work for Qualcomm, and I'm leading a research team in neural network efficiency, particularly things like neural network compression and quantization and neural architecture search. But today is, of course, about our panel and our panel discussion. And our topic for the session will be growing the tinyML community in the EMEA region. Now, I hope that you can see from all of these tinyML presentations that the EMEA region itself has a strong presence in both research and in industry. There's a lot of people that are working on digital, analog, and mixed signal hardware, alongside sensors and software for many areas. You've seen a lot of IoT applications, automotive, etc. So that's all very exciting. But sometimes I also feel that when thinking of tinyML, there's more companies and researchers in the US and Asia that come to mind for me, as opposed to Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. So I wonder if that's justified. So with this in mind, in this panel discussion, we will explore where the EMEA region is currently standing when it comes to tinyML, how we compare with the rest of the world, what we can do together to build a stronger and more collaborative community, and perhaps also what our key challenges are in the field of growing tinyML in our own region. Now, we will discuss this with an esteemed panel from different parts in our region, from both academia and industry. But before I introduce the panel, first of all, for the audience, after this panel discussion in the last 5 to 10 minutes, there will also be room for questions from your side for the panelists. So feel free to add your questions during the panel in the Q&A section, and we'll try to get some space at the end to work your questions in there. All right. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to our panelists. One by one. First off is Gianmarco IODICE. He is a tech and team lead from the ARM compute library, responsible for the machine learning software performance optimizations on ARM processors. And Gianmarco is also the organizer for the tinyML UK meetup. Welcome, Gianmarco. Very happy to have you on our panel. First off, and if you can answer in a few sentences, what is it that excites you the most about tinyML at the moment?
Okay, first of all, thanks a lot for the opportunity. Yeah, definitely opportunities to bring machine learning on microcontrollers. This is a generic sentence, but actually it's because microcontrollers now are ubiquitous, and basically so everywhere because of the small size, low power consumption. They also computation capabilities, but most important, because of their low power consumption. So for me, what excites are the problems that we can actually solve with a few dollars or euros.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks a lot. And again, welcome. Our second panelist is Loic LIETAR. He is a semiconductor veteran and a self-proclaimed young first-time entrepreneur with Greenwaves. And Greenwaves has been working on AI at the very edge for a very long time. And they were even one of the first companies to actually make processors for this. So these days, Greenwaves is drifting towards more complex applications, but still always working on things that are living on a battery. Again, also for you, Loic, welcome. And for you, the same question, if you can, in a few sentences. What excites you the most about tinyML at the moment?
Thank you. I think I'm saying the same thing, Marco, maybe differently. I think tinyML is a way really to give a tremendous boost to MCU applications that are much richer than what we are doing today. And this is endless. But at the same time, it's an MCU market. It means that it's very, very fragmented, and there will be no killer app. I don't think we should be romantic about it, which means that it's the challenge, I think, for us as a community is how is it that we reach out to every single customer, being the designer of an electronic device, to deploy tinyML into their applications. And this is really the community challenge. I don't see it as a technological challenge. It's an educational challenge.
Interesting. It's definitely something that will come up in the discussions, in this panel discussion. Thanks a lot. Our third panelist is Abbas Rahimi. He did his PhD at the UC of San Diego, and then he did a postdoc at the UC Berkeley, and yet another postdoc at ETH Zurich. And he's joined IBM Research in Zurich as a research staff member roughly a year ago. And related to tinyML, he's working on co-design algorithms and emerging hardware systems with an emphasis on improving energy efficiency and robustness. Welcome, Abbas. for you, exactly the same question. What makes you excited about tinyML?
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. Yeah, perhaps it's more than the tinyML. It's the duality between AI and hardware systems, right? The interplay between AI for systems and systems for AI. Especially, just yesterday we see a paper from the Google. Actually, the paper has been around for a year. That how we can use AI in this particular format, maybe reinforcement learnings, to be able to boost the performance of the hardware accelerators in the hardware design. And then perhaps next generations, we could have the hardware that can explore, the next generations of the AI algorithms that we cannot see. And, in the past, we couldn't get the benefit of that. So the interplay between the two, I guess it's quite interesting. And for sure, making the efficient tinyML will play an important role there.
Yeah, it's also coming from the AI community. That's also something that definitely excites me about this interplay. Thanks a lot. Our fourth panelist is Patricia SCANLON, and she's the founder and executive chair of SoapBox Labs. Now, SoapBox Labs is the world's leading provider of proprietary speech recognition for children across education and entertainment industries. Dr. SCANLON holds a PhD and has over 20 years experience in speech recognition and machine learning technology. Welcome, Patricia. What makes you excited about tinyML?
I think I'm looking at this from a slightly different perspective, just given the industry application here, but really tinyML will unlock significant market opportunities, particularly in the kids space. Kids have very different use case needs than adults. If you think about it, high processing inference, being able to do the ML on the chip, sufficient amounts of processing capabilities there, coupled with the low power, that means more playtime, right? When you think about it that way, and low cost relative to what we've seen in recent years. And those three things together is what will unlock massive opportunities in the smart toys and gaming, in XR, as we go forward. And the more and more we can do on chip, embedded, the more play opportunities, the more immersive experiences you can unlock for kids in a really safe and cost-effective way. And that's really important for the future of this industry. I'm really excited about that.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, you make me feel a bit sad that I wasn't born later. That's
yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
All right, thank you. And our fifth and final panelist is Hajar MOUSANNIF. She's a professor of computer science at the Cadi Ayyad University in Morocco. She's a research project lead specialized in artificial intelligence. And she also leads the tinyML Moroccan chapter and is currently investigating how to promote this technology in the Northern African region in both education and research. And she told me that she fell in love with tinyML at first sight. So Hajar, what makes you excited about tinyML?
Yeah, what excites me the most about tinyML is the myriad of opportunities it opens up. The idea that any object around me could not only become smart, but also privacy preserving is something really fascinating. And from the R&D perspective, the tons of challenges needed to be addressed on the algorithms, on the system, on the hardware, and on the software is really exciting. And I'm very enthusiastic about this field.
Great. You also bring it across as incredibly enthusiastic. So that's really good to see. Good. Okay, so that's our panel. But before actually diving into the topic of how we can actually grow tinyML and how we can grow the EMEA region, I want to get to know the panelists a little bit better and also make sure that the audience gets to know every one of you better. So perhaps in the same order as I just introduced everybody, starting with Gianmarco, perhaps you can take a minute to explain what are you currently working on tinyML and how does your work at the moment fit into the bigger picture of the region? Gianmarco?
Okay, yes. So about tinyML, I'm working mainly on performance optimization. So in particular, I'm driving and leading the software performance optimizations across on different ARM processors. I would say I'm a full spectrum on the full spectrum from the cloud to the very edge on microcontrollers. And the reason is simple because they have different challenges, but they also have a common thing. So we want the most efficient implementation because of power. So And so my goal is basically to provide the most efficient routines on the ARM processor chip.
All right, very cool, very cool. Loic?
Okay, so my company, we make processor for tinyML, which we coined in parallel the AI at the very edge. I think I said before that there was no killer app. As a matter of fact, there is one device that is the next billion units consumer platform, which are the earbuds. And there is almost no AI yet into it. I think this is the singlest most exciting AI platform for the next 5 to 7 years. Ultimately, if I pick one application, it will be instant translation from any language that you hear to the language that you understand. This is not for today, but this gives us probably a 10-year roadmap.
Yeah. Do you also think, just like Elon Musk, that language is going to be a thing of the past very soon?
Except for poetry, yes.
Good. Abbas?
Yeah, so I have been working on a relatively different brain-inspired computing paradigm. This is called hyperdimensional computing. Actually, this is the Finnish version. It's inspired by Pentti Kanerva, who is a Finnish neuroscientist. There's also a USI version. It's called vector symbolic architecture. And it is all about computing with random vectors, right? And it has a number of advantages. From the functionality perspective, the beauty is that we can support a full algebra. So the entire of the computation is transparent, and then we can learn quite fast. We have been working on a number of applications related to the tinyML, like the variable processing, you name it, EEG, EMG, XG, to learn rapidly from the personalized data and to be able to do the classifications quite accurately at the extremely low power consumption. And on top of that, on top of this functionality, there is also a very strong flavor of the implementations of these computing paradigms into the hardware, especially the emerging hardware, the non-volatile memory, namely. At the IBM, we are using the phase change material devices such that we can implement this kind of computing paradigms. This is pretty much local operations, and they are very resilient against noise and essentially low SNR, low signal to noise ratio condition. So if you have a in-memory computing platform with the non-volatile memories like the phase change materials, and then we do the analog computing, then essentially we can map all the primitives of these computing paradigms and perform the classifications as well as learning in the extremely energy efficient manner. We have been working on that again in the number of classifications algorithms for the edge. And currently we are also working more on the algorithmic side to bridge it with the other paradigms of the computings to be able to move it towards essentially AGI, because as I mentioned in the first part, we have also a well-defined set of operations that they can be used for analogical reasoning and then essentially high-level reasoning tasks that are quite useful for the reasoning.
Oh, yeah. Sounds very exciting. So are you going to solve AGI with this? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, essentially trying to approach it. For example, we can easily solve a problem like what is the dollar of Mexico with simple operations like binding or unbinding, which are the essentially XOR operations. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot. Patricia?
Yeah, so since 2013, we have been building our own proprietary speech recognition platform for children. We license our tech to third parties to integrate into their products for kids, across education, toys, games, all that. But since 2019, we've been working on taking their data center level processing or deep learning solutions that we've been delivering via API onto chips. And then trying to get that balance I talked about between the three of them, right? And what can we deliver? So basically, I kind of like to think of it like from the lab to the living room. This is real world applications, real kids having to interact, dealing with background noise, dealing with all the different issues you have with children and the mics and the physical, problems and challenges that throws up. So basically, we've been working with a number of different providers in the tinyML space, predominantly actually in the US. And this is why I was kind of keen to talk to, get on this panel today, meet more people, build a network here in Europe. What can we start doing here too? So get those solutions from the cloud, get them onto chip and unlock new opportunities. So that's kind of what we're active on, especially in the last 18 months.
Yeah. But your company is actually located in Ireland, right?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
But caters mostly to the US still. Okay.
Still, yeah, unfortunately, but I think there are more and more opportunities here, and I think that's a really exciting thing to this community that would become and SoapBox Labs to become more active in the community.
Yes, great. Right, Hajar, what are you working on in the field of tinyML, and how does your work fit into the bigger picture?
Yeah, I actually come from a machine learning background, not an embedded system one. I used to work with big models, and plenty of computing resources, not caring much about the amount of RAM I'll be using, nor the amount of power I'll be consuming. So when I first discovered that it was possible to deploy like a model inside a tiny with device with like 256 kilobytes of RAM and less than 1 megabyte of flash, I said to myself, is that serious? No way. For me, it was like making an elephant fit into a bikini, and I was so much intrigued to learn and explore this field further. So when I started my learning journey into tinyML, many ideas started to come to my mind. And what's funny is that the more I learned, the more my brain started to automatically figure out a tiny ML solution to every problem I encounter in my daily life. And this is something I'm having so much fun with. I remember wanting to design a tiny ML mosquito buzzing detector that would tell me not to sleep in the room when it detects the presence of a mosquito. So I'm one of those who get so upset with mosquitoes, by the way. And in my work, I actually do both teaching and research. I'm coordinator of a master program in data science and artificial intelligence at my university. So I'm planning to include tinyML as a part of the curriculum of the students starting from next year. I also dig into different tinyML research directions that caught my attention recently, like tinyML hardware abstraction. This is something that I would love to explore further from a research perspective. Pruning, quantization, and optimization methods are also of interest to me, and I would love to dig further into neural architecture search methods. So this is what basically I'll be doing.
Excellent. Good. So now that the whole audience knows all of the panel, perhaps we can dive into the discussion points. So as I mentioned, the discussion is going to be about how are we going to grow the tinyML space community business within the EMEA region. But before we can actually do that, I think perhaps it's good to sketch a little bit of what is the tinyML in the EMEA region all about. So perhaps to open it up to all the panelists, what trends do you see in the region? What is happening in the EMEA region when it comes to tinyML? Anybody want to get a first stab at this?
I don't know who want to start, but in short, I think this is definitely the beginning of the tinyML EMEA. The cool thing for me is the fact that in the EMEA region, we have big companies and heterogeneous companies. As we have seen, for instance, before during the session, so we have companies, silicon vendors, we have also fabless companies. And I think what we are seeing is a lot of emerging, we are seeing the emerging of a lot of use cases thanks to tinyML. And for the tinyML perspective in the EMEA region, I believe what we probably need to shape or to improve is the better collaboration, probably. Because as I said, this is just at the beginning. At the moment are just isolated groups at the moment. Maybe a stronger, better collaboration can make the story even better.
Yeah, if I might add something to what has been just said, I think now, today, the majority of the AI industry is located in North America, Europe, and Asia. Africa is less represented in the global picture. So I think that AI in general and tinyML in particular needs to solve problems for all of the human equation, not just the privileged, not just tech giants, and not at the expense of those without access. I think it's important to make AI and tinyML accessible, inclusive, and understandable by all. because we really need to direct the efforts of Europe, Middle East, and Africa region community in this direction. In my opinion, Africa is the continent that needs AI and tinyML the most. Why? I think most of the AI solutions or innovations that have been developed so far match the context of countries that develop those solutions. They match their specific problems, and these solutions might not be adapted at all and even fill within fiction for the African context. The African context has its own set of problems. We're struggling, with healthcare, with poverty, with food security, with education, with unemployment, social disparities, etc., etc. We're struggling to have like basic things and decent living. And this is, I think, the difference between Africa and the other regions within the EMEA community. So, but on the other hand, we also have like young and energetic talents and bright minds that are willing to learn, to contribute and improve their lives and their families' lives. And I don't know if you know this information, in Africa, the average age is 19.5-year-olds. So imagine the potential and the opportunities we can do with those young and energetic people, at least on the education level.
Can you think of any in particular challenges that would be different, or if they were developed with those communities in mind around tinyML?
Yeah, there are actually some initiatives in Africa related to agriculture. Like, for example, I saw recently a research project done by Google to be able, just using the smartphone, to identify diseases in cassava. I also saw some initiative, or just the day, I think before yesterday, there was a session about like a cholera detector using tinyML water taps, like something we plug into water taps to be able to detect cholera. And there are some initiatives related to wild preserving, like how to preserve animals, how to preserve forests. I saw applications of tinyML that detect chainsaws, like to protect the forest. And those are applications that are specific to the African context. And I think the more we orient our attention toward projects that have societal impact, I think that it would be something very interesting to explore.
Yeah, definitely. Yesterday we had the panel on the tinyML for good. And honestly, I think in the tinyML EMEA region, we have a very strong story for tinyML for good, because honestly, tinyML has the ingredients to unlock other use cases in Africa to improve, to solve, human problems, let's say. However, yesterday also, they highlighted one other problem. The fact that we call it capacity building. How many people can actually do this kind of applications? What kind of study do we need to have for the tinyML Foundation, from a tinyML Foundation point of view, in terms of educational material? Because yes, we have all the ingredients, but we need to make it accessible to everyone in order to unlock and scale, of course, all these kind of applications.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Marco. I think the education, because I'm kind of new, relatively new. I'm engineering as well, but come more from the software side of things. But the education around the difference between IoT in general, tinyML, in particular in Europe, when we're talking about all this new regulation around AI as well, to be able to, because there are some people who really don't differentiate when they think AI, they think ML, they don't differentiate cloud data processing versus everything on the device and completely safe. So, when you think about AI for good, to me, it means protecting the privacy of, let's say, kids. And one of the dangers is that when people don't understand the difference, they think all AI is AI. They don't understand that there is no data challenges here because it's all on device. They don't understand that the models, nothing can leave, nothing personal, nothing can be recreated. And the danger is, without good education, you get swept up under legislation that's not appropriate. And that takes a while to unpick. And if, you know, without that kind of education, that differentiator being physical on device versus cloud processing, I would worry, you know, you could end up with regulatory challenges that are not appropriate for tinyML, but it's a result of poor communication or lack of understanding from decision makers. You know?
Do you believe that oh, you want to comment, Loic? Go ahead.
No, maybe more generally, I'm not sure there is anything specifically European about tinyML or African. I think the way I see it, where I see the community today is that we are all excited, me the first one, so about the potential. Again, I think all the technology blocks are there. The challenge collectively anywhere in the world is how do we make it real? And as a company that, you know, is selling processor to customers that are trying, because most of them are trying and struggling to deploy product with tinyML, it's hell. It's hell because real life, tinyML is about the physical life, right? It's about you want to not even identify a face. You just want to say, hey, there is a face in front of the camera, no matter what the light is. And believe me, this is very, very difficult. And all image sensors are different, and you know, and you have to add the training data set that are specific to your use case. And I think as an industry, we don't know how to do that today. And you know, the last mile of our customers between having a working prototype and a product qualified for massive distribution takes forever.
Yeah.
So it's if there is one challenge, it's around, you know, able to produce training data sets to narrow down a given model to a specific application in a reliable manner, right? Whatever, you know, predictive maintenance, face detection, any, or detecting mosquitoes, for example, it has to be reliable. And if you want to kill mosquitoes, you should not kill bees, for example. And it's probably very easy to make that in the field. And once those things are in the field, they are wild. You cannot call back hundreds of thousands of devices. This doesn't work. You at most you can kill them if you want. So that's really a collective challenge, and for the whole industry.
I think there's a lot of commonalities in terms of tinyML across all of the regions, right? I think a lot of data challenges,
all regions and things, all applications.
They all exist, right? Yes. But what are some of the specifics, perhaps in the EMEA region compared to, let's say, the United States or Asia? Are we all in the same boat, or are also some differences or some other challenges because we're living in this Europe, Africa, Middle East region?
I would.
Hajar?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually don't agree that, we share the same big challenges, but at the end, there are major differences. I can just give you one single example, is that of the accessibility of hardware in Africa, for example. Well, there's a pain point there with the availability of development boards for tinyML enthusiasts in Africa, including myself, just to get our hands dirty and try to develop apps. Just if we take the lack of conventional distribution centers in Africa, we have only 3 for the Arduino. And if we want to order something, sometimes the cost of hardware kits, while, for example, $30 might seem like a little amount for Western country, this could represent like a person's income for a whole week in Africa. So I don't agree that there are specificities of the African context that might hinder the progress that, for example, developers make due to the limited availability of hardware kits. And also, if we take model robustness, there is this problem of data bias. We cannot build models if we don't include, examples from that matches the context of everything. Well, it depends on the application, but I imagine that if we take like a facial recognition and we train it just on faces of white people and we apply the model to black one, it would not work. So I think there is an opportunity. tinyML, I see it as an opportunity really to contextualize and democratize machine learning and artificial intelligence. Because since we move the processing to the data, and we can include African data this time, we will reduce bias and allow building more robust model. But I agree with you, Loic, there is this big challenge of major challenge of training those models and having something robust. But I think it cannot be done if we don't take into account the contextual level of each region and the specific particularities in each region.
Yeah,
I mean, I was not clear because this is what I was saying.
Loic,
sorry,
yeah,
that it's really. Sorry, go ahead, Patricia.
No, I was actually just saying, the issue of bias has been, only a really good study of all the voice assistants at the moment demonstrating up to 50% difference in error rates for certain dialects and accents over US, kind of Eastern, or on the West Coast, but very Pacific regions. And when they actually took into account socioeconomic or racial bias, it was really significant. And then when we think about AI, it's all built on data, as Loic was saying. So what data are you taking when you're putting it off? And the problem sometimes with an offline system, when you're completely embedded, you have no opportunity to continue to collect data. So let's say you've developed it in Europe and then you migrate it to Africa, you have no opportunity to collect the new data from the new people using it. So it'll always stay biased, which is a problem, unless you can do some personalization, but there's limited problems there. But yeah, absolutely. I would agree the robustness will always stem from the data. And without good collaboration across continents, you are always going to face that. Absolutely.
And Hajar, there is one point that I think you have not highlighted that much, is that tinyML, the beauty of tinyML, it is a very, very affordable technology, right? Now, I agree with you, $30 is expensive, but you could probably with a $1 microcontroller plus a microphone or a small camera that would cost $1. So for $10, you have an AI system that can solve very real problems, right? You don't need server farms, you don't need high bandwidth communication, optical fiber. You have an ultra low data rate wireless connection plus a $10 board, and you have a very smart system. So I think, from a geographic perspective, certainly the benefits are much equally divided across the world than would the heavy-duty ML solutions are.
Yeah.
This I definitely agree.
Hey, and Loic, also one thing you mentioned at the start, that you felt the market was fragmented a bit, right? And if you go to the US is a big country, but it's also one country, one legislation, right? And one government. And Europe and Africa and the Middle East, it's all a lot more fragmented, right? When it comes to countries, legislation, the resources that are available, the market that you have, the languages that people speak. Is that something that's potentially also a barrier in our region for the spread of
the fragmentation are coming from the use cases. I don't think in tinyML, to be frank, to detect a rodent is a very relevant application for tinyML. So the rodents might have different types across continents, but it's one application. You might have 2 or 3 suppliers in each country. So you have a huge number of applications. It's a bit like microcontroller. I think I used to work for ST Microelectronics. They have 100,000 customers for microcontrollers. Okay, This gives you an idea of the fragmentation. And I would not say that each customer has a different application, but probably, you have 10 customers doing that, 10 customers doing that. It's ultra fragmented. You won't detect water drops, right? That's one application for tinyML. It will be the same anywhere, but there are hundreds and thousands of those for which, there is no publicly available training data set for those applications. So the guys, maybe we should try to build small communities of favor because, or the people who want to detect rodents or droplets. This is I think what we have to address.
A bigger challenge, you think? Yeah, Gianmarco, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I was thinking mainly about languages. I mean, if we compare the tinyML America with tinyML EMEA, I mean, how many languages do we have in the EMEA region?
Yeah, probably 50, 100.
I have no idea. Honestly, I have no idea. But personally, if I see the goal for does is to reach everyone. And I know also people that maybe they are not comfortable to speak in English because maybe they don't know English, but they can contribute in this. So this could be a barrier for expanding, tinyML EMEA, because there are maybe regions where they don't speak English and maybe they prefer to have sessions in their mother tongue language, and probably could explore this. I'm not saying we should change the language. I'm not saying this at all. We should continue with English. But maybe also, yeah, but maybe also other sessions in their mother tongue. So maybe just to reach also a broader audience in their tongue.
And I'm guessing also what you're saying with that is that it's very important to have like local tinyML meetups that are organized by local people so that we can actually remove those language barriers and create communities, right?
Yes, definitely. Of course, at the same time, we want to have a global connection. So maybe, yes, in terms of local, yeah, we could try to use a local language, but at the same time, maybe it's better if we can propose the same topic in English in order to have a broader audience globally. Because of course, if we want to solve a local problem, we need a worldwide community to solve it at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. And also thinking a little bit about, Hajar, did you want to comment? Go ahead.
I just want to comment on this because I also think that we need more diversity. And I mean diversity in terms of gender, of age, of ability, religion, and I would say in every tinyML project and also current collaborations, because I think that innovation is best served by a diverse team. Because we can have like many problems if we have this lack of diversity. So I think it's very important and even imperative also from the business perspective, because if we want to expand and if we want like to create value, we need to have this diverse team and this collaboration across different regions and across projects.
Definitely. Yeah. And also, like our last speaker was talking a little bit, Colette was talking about all these funds that are available in the European Union. And I actually wanted to know from the panelists, like, is this something that's actually helping? Like, do you know people, like, are you using it yourself, these European funds? Is this something that people in your environment are using or in your communities? And then perhaps afterwards for Hajar as well.
We've availed of significant EU funding to fund the startup, and it's extremely time consuming and it's very difficult to get, unfortunately, at the moment. But when it's a deep tech innovations, there is good funding, so it separates you from other startups, or even companies can fund their research efforts in a number of different ways. So there's a lot of supports. And it does allow you, the problem with deep tech innovation research, it takes some time, especially from small companies, but you can do this through match funding. So yeah, we've done that. It allowed us to move into the space, which is important. So yeah, I'm happy to talk to people about different options there.
Do you also think that's a benefit of being in the European Union?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, especially when you're at the very early stages, a lot of investors, European investors, are very risk adverse. And I mean very risk adverse compared to US. So the US, unfortunately for us starting companies on this side or trying to innovate, we really struggle with investors investing in deep tech. Anything that takes too long, more than 6 months. And if you're not biotech or medtech, people don't tend to understand it. They kind of they're going, but your software, where's your POC? Why aren't you selling into the market right now? And trying to get people to understand that AI, any kind of ML kind of applications takes time, it takes data, it takes research. Whereas in the US, there's a lot more investment for these types of companies. So I think the EU, the EIC accelerator is trying to compensate. So now the EU will actually invest as well, right? They won't just give grants, but if you want bigger grants, they'll actually invest as well to try and compensate for the lack of risk, the risk adverse nature of EU VC and investment. And it's slow. It's not happening very quickly. The change is not happening. So yes, I would highly recommend anybody try to avail of that, because your investors will like it if you can bring it with you. You will get more likely to get investors to jump. if they think there's some kind of non-dilutive equity funding involved as well.
Do any of the other panelists recognize this, Abbas? Are you making use of any of these European funds by any chance?
Yeah, we have. Patricia, yes, it's very difficult to raise money. Strangely enough, in France, it's easier to borrow money than to raise money.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Counterintuitive, because it's guaranteed by the state. But to borrow money, you still have to raise money. So, but raising money is hell, despite what the European person said just before, right? I think at political level, it's all good. In practice, no one wants to invest in deep tech. So
not in the early stage. Once you're scaling, it's fine. But in the early stage,
it's always too early. Let's put it like this.
Yeah.
Until you don't need help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also want to ask Hajar, what is this actually like in Northern Africa? Is that because we have these methods in Europe?
After hearing what you just said, I think our situation is much better because Morocco, because I actually coordinate 3 research projects with 3.5 $350,000. So I think that's a good budget for 3 AI projects, and we can develop prototypes. But our issue is really with getting the hardware and scaling up. Because we develop prototypes and we come up with nice innovations with proof of concepts. As a researcher, I published in high impactful journals, etc. But when we want to move to the industry and build this startup and move and scale it, etc., this is where we really stop. So I think we need a whole innovation ecosystem. But I think we're in it good. That's why my question to Colette was about, is there a possibility to collaborate with developing countries, with the like European Union, developing countries collaborations? But she said that she was not sure about, is there any specific problems? And that left me frustrated, because I think it can be a win-win situation. We have young potential talents who work really hard, PhD students, access to resources, at least human resources and human intelligence. But I think there are a lot of perspectives and a lot of opportunities for collaborations there, and we can do great work.
To get that money, you just have to join the EU.
And we are near.
And also with the panelists, I want to kind of hone in a little bit about the tinyML community itself in the EMEA region. I know that Hajar and Gianmarco, you are both organizing the meetups, right? Gianmarco, you're doing the UK one. What is this like? How big is it? How much attended is it? How fast did it grow? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so we are the 4th, I think, biggest tinyML group worldwide, which is pretty good. I don't remember exactly on top of my head the number, but I believe we are around 300 people. Please, Dominic, correct if I'm wrong, more or less. Yes, we try to have, let's say, a quarterly or every 2 months, it depends, a talk for the tinyML UK. But at the same time, last time we tried to have a collaboration with a different country, in particular, in that case was Italy. So we invited a guest from Italy for presenting a talk, Massimo Banzi, about Arduino. And I think that is something that I really like. I mean, collaboration, try to invite guest speakers from different countries to honestly open the conversation and not keep it just local. Honestly, I think it went well. It's still growing, the tinyML UK meetup, and that's it.
Maybe I'm going to surprise you with the Moroccan meetup. We launched it 10 days ago, 10 days, and we've already exceeded 200 enthusiasts.
Wow.
This is fast growing. And this is why I tell you that in Africa, we have a lot of potential. And maybe what helped me is that I am followed on LinkedIn by more than 18,000 people, AI and data scientists, enthusiasts. So I have this influence then on social media. It's just, they know me and they trust me and they decided to join because they know that it will bring a lot of potential. So we're planning to do a lot of great stuff together. And if we can collaborate, all of us, I think we can achieve nice things.
So it sounds like a potential new Morocco location for SoapBox or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. We need to hire. So you want to say, we could set up an office there, remote, flexible working these days. So that's fine.
See, this is the power of the EMEA community. We're setting up collaborations right as we speak during the panel.
There you go. Great. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. No, it's great to hear about these positive tinyML communities, right? I'm wondering, what can we do to also help these be set up in more locations, right? Like Northern Africa, pretty big. It's not only Morocco. Do you know of any places where this is being launched as well? And how can we actually get this to happen in more of these regions?
There is none in France, and we are a colleague of mine is working
Loic,
on that.
What are you doing?
I discovered it yesterday, and we decided to start it in France.
Wow, that's great. Yeah.
I think Afghani is
the numbers are
also
good.
In Nigeria, they have 200 roughly, or 254 members. Yes. So a very good numbers, honestly.
Yeah, Abbas, how's it in Switzerland? Like, you're in Switzerland at the moment, right?
Yeah, perhaps we should also start. Yeah.
Do you have a tinyML community yet over there?
Not yet. Yeah.
Not yet. All right. Well, perhaps a good point to set one up. Perhaps you will get excited after this session. So,
in fact, we are going to have a session in the afternoon, not in the afternoon, in 2 hours, specifically on meetups. You'll cover this.
Good. This is a good prelude for that one. Yeah. And furthermore, I also wanted to ask you, apart from tinyML meetups and communities, what do the panelists think we can actually do to improve the collaborations in the region? Like Patricia, you're running a company at the moment. What are the kind of things that we would be looking for when it comes to collaborations in the tinyML space? Like, what would you be helped best with?
We are always looking for people to want to help implement our networks, our models on cost-efficient, low-power device that could, power a smart toy. So we're very interested in different solutions. One of the challenges we always face is the cost profile. 3 years ago, we started looking at the space originally because we really wanted, I'll give you an example, the toy industry brought out voice technology, AI into toys. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but it was back in 2014, 2015. Mattel got destroyed in the press because the Barbie was listening. The German government actually told parents to destroy the Kayla doll because it was sending your children's voices to a company that had links to the US military. Now that was Nuance. We all know Nuance, right? But because they had some DARPA contracts, so anybody to date has stopped integrating really smart toys. So if you think about a smart toy, it needs to be able to do image recognition, needs to be able to do voice. But nobody will really bring out toys now that are linked to the cloud. So the challenge for the community is, yes, we can do some amazing things and we can have large vocabulary speech recognition systems in devices, wherever, but if the cost profile is too high, it just will not bring it. So we're always looking for people who can do those three things, the battery, and ours is all about collaboration. To be able to find partners in the long term that we can go to different providers. So we are working, like I said, with people in the US, but we are always interested in closer partnerships here to be able to do things that are, there's always trade-offs. We have the data, we have the networks, but we have to kind of compromise to get it onto a chip. But the problem is at the moment is the compromises are almost too great in the vocabulary size or whatever, or the cost profile is too high. So it's always that innovation. And then, support from the EU would be fantastic to be able to bring these to market, because a lot of it's in R&D. There's such great innovation, but how far are we to bringing something out that will actually be adopted by one of the large toy manufacturers? Because they, they have their favorites, they have their very big chip manufacturers they like to work with, but they're not always the most innovative when it comes to the tinyML space. So that's, we're always trying to find people who want to play in this space. And sometimes people are always thinking in the adult market, and the adult market will always pay more.
Well, I guess that's the business you're living in at the moment, right? That's tough to do something.
Yeah, but it's fun.
Yeah.
But I think that's where something really innovative can happen when you put parameters around something and say, you know what can you do when you put a ceiling here and you put a ceiling here? What can we do and what new? Because sometimes people have something on the shelf that they don't really think there's a use case for, and they'll go a different direction. So we always like to put it out there, going, well, we have the use cases that we implement online. How many of these can we do offline? And maybe in the next year or two, maybe there's some other challenges, you know?
Yeah. Cool. So how about the other panelists? What are you looking for in terms of collaborations in the tinyML community?
Yeah, perhaps I can comment maybe just first by pointing that from my points of view, what is missing from the community first, you know, from the research perspective of the community. If we look at it like the way that I see it is like a quad chart, right? So in one corner, perhaps most of the attention went toward, you know, CNN, right? That is perhaps is going to be replaced again by the old MLPs, right? You know, we see this MLP paper around, so perhaps all the accelerators that we made so far is going to be replaced with a simple MLP, but of course deep versions to be seen. So I would say one corner is really concentrated around, you know, different aspects of the convolutional neural networks. The other corner, the second corner, is maybe more about the sequential processing. Transformers is coming, also variants of the accelerators for the transformers. And the third one is, you know, to make the story short, you know, is perhaps spiking, neuromorphic. But the things that I feel is missing from the community is what I call it generally hybrid, in the sense of the kind of the hybrid mechanisms from different approaches that we can combine together to empower a new systems. And especially if you are talking about, you know, generally systems, right? So we have a communications part, we have the storage part, we have the processing part, all the way together. And perhaps, you know, also the hybrid mechanisms to bring them into the picture. And even if you look at the successful, let's say, big ML, most of them are hybrid. It's not just only a convolutional neural network. It has a perception part that is tightly coupled, perhaps with a search, with a big tree search, right? So bringing this hybrid view into the angle is quite good, because especially we have the backgrounds, in the logic, we have the backgrounds into the CS side. So it might essentially open completely new opportunities. And this is something that is really underrepresented in the community. And yeah, and the things that we need is to essentially across the area to provide a holistic look, if you will, to be able to optimize across different approaches here.
Yeah. So what can we actually do to address that problem, you think, within the community?
Yeah, holistic approach, you know, it's just not, let's say that I got this model, I am super excited, I just ran it to do a blind quantizations or whatever is available. No, it should be really a holistic look into the approach. You know, we should really build some deep knowledge, and actually the area has the potential, right? So some of the, you know, and the countries are very good in the mathematical side, in the background side. So trying to look at, you know, the fundamental from the applications all the way to the, you know, to the actual, maybe even the novel hardware that they can empower something's new. So just having really a holistic look from the top down and the bottom up together to be able to devise something's new. And I guess the area has really this power, rather than just blindly looking at a particular interest corner and just go for that. Yeah.
I also have an idea that might be interesting if we want to improve, you know, the collaboration among the community. I think we have like different levels. We have those beginners, enthusiasts who are just willing to learn, and we have experimented, and we have like industry who are dealing with the real world projects. So I think we need to separate. For beginners, we need like tutorials to just initiate them and show them that what it's possible, how they can just manage like to build small prototypes, etc. We also need to organize like boot camps or maybe just challenges to see what we can come up with. For those intermediate, we have different set of resources, like maybe the keynote speakers will have like different more technical challenges, and we explain technically how things work and what are the challenges from technical points of view, as Abbas mentioned. And for industry, we have like different set of things, and then we bridge all together. to be able to spend to make the community grow, and also make the community, because what makes the community is the developers. We need more open source resources, and those open source resources, we will not get them mainly from industry, because industry, they want to make business out of it, so they were not really willing to contribute. But developers, which means students, PhD students, and community of developers who are willing to contribute, are those from whom we can expect those like TensorFlow, how it started, or Google. It's the community of developers that made it. And this is what we need really to grow. And we cannot grow them if we don't educate them and give I don't know how it could be done, but I see it as like investment in those developers to make them just have those open source initiatives, because this is what will make the community grow.
Do you think tinyML should actually start giving courses and creating courses for people, and then more as an organization actually teach the whole region and the community?
Why not? We can have contributors. Like I saw the course, the edX talks by the edX course by Vijay and Moroni. This kind of initiatives is good. It's in audit form, it's open, and maybe we can have it in different languages, or just have like teach people. I took that course myself, and I had no embedded systems background, only ML background, and I managed to do nice things, and it was good. So I think, why not, if we can contribute to build this community?
Yeah,
awesome. And Tijmen and Hajar, to make it actionable, we are looking into this. In fact, kind of doing exactly this type of things, and maybe also do like summer schools and different type of activities, just to get this educational activities going.
Mm-hmm. Good. Hey, and Gianmarco and Loic, what are you guys looking for in terms of collaborations, and where do you see that we can improve things in the region?
I think the challenge is, on one hand, I fully agree that we need to enlarge the community of contributors from a software point of view. But again, I'm back, ultimately it's about data, right? And we need to think about that. AI is, that type of AI is really about data, I think. And we need to think about how to make available much more diverse and specialized data. That's one. On the other hand, ultimately, for those things to be applied, we need an infrastructure, and in that case, there are small electronic boards that are being designed and sold by companies, right? And what I always saying, as a processor company, my processor are only worth the software that runs on it. So it is in our advantage if you want to make available those kits. And we, at our scale, we are enabling as much as we can the universities, for example. You know, we give 10 boards here, 20 there, not hundreds, so that students, postdoc, and so forth can play with this. I think here we can level, and of course I cannot. We have probably 5 ML guys in the company, which is huge for us. So they make some examples, but if we could have hundreds of people making example on that processor, that would be good. So there is this complementarity. Because, you know, the smallest integrated circuit to be developed costs 10 million euro. You don't do anything with less than that, for sure. So either you are limited to very tiny ML problems that run on massively available microcontroller of today, or if you have more ambition, then the offer is very limited. I think there are probably 2-3 AI improved microcontroller in the marketplace today, right? Yeah. It's a very limited offer, and those have
like, at least in Morocco, there's a lot of people.
Broadly. Yeah. Sorry,
it sounds like in Morocco there's a lot of people that are willing to make a lot of solutions for you. But they're lacking the funds to actually get the devices, right?
So I'll make sure that I send 20 boards to Hajar for her students.
Yeah, that would be great, right? And then let the applications flow. That good. Gianmarco, do you have any comments?
Sorry, yes. Maybe I apologize because about the holistic story, something I forgot to say.
Okay, sure.
I fully agree, and very often we are very romantic, so we are obsessed by making the tinyML computing part of the system very good, so low power, blah, 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 blah. Now, at some point, it turns out, and there are plenty of examples where the AI part of the system consume much less than what the sensor consume, right? And here there is a diminishing return, and I think there is value. We have to be very careful as a community to make sure that we don't ultra specialize, we don't fall in love in being better for the sake of it on our problems, right? We are solving real life problems.
Yes.
And as such, there is more value in making more generic tinyML solution, because the complexity, the cost, and the power consumptions are in line with the sensors. And we have to make those solutions more generic, not more specialized.
Yes, I agree.
Sometimes we are losing sight of that in our community, I think.
Yeah, it's perhaps something we can stress in all of our meetings a little bit more. Jean-Marc,
yeah, I would agree with that. That, you know, there is always trade-offs, and what's everybody working on, and are you going to meet real-world use cases?
Yes.
I think that's fantastic. I think the more real-world use cases you have, and then people may design differently. Based on that, because we find a lot of the times that a lot of embedded chips are designed for image processing and video processing, and actually if they designed it for audio, you may be able to get away with a lot more, you know.
Yeah.
Or mixing audio and image.
Loic,
Yeah.
Finally, John Marco. Sorry, I was trying to get to.
Don't worry, I promise to be short, but yes, what I think we can do more educational sessions, materials to target, as Hajar says before, different kind of developers. Because definitely, I mean, if we're talking about quantization, well, probably we know what quantization is, but for some people, quantization can be a tricky story or a tricky part to do. So maybe creating or material to support the tinyML community from very beginners to very expert can help to unlock other use cases and also help the community in general. This is what I think.
Completely agree. Yeah, amazing. So
and we should also not forget the crowdsourcing, because the issue is the data, but we have a community. We might have people who are willing just to contribute. And I remember the Common Voice project that Google started. Those are people who just wanted to contribute. And in our community, we can like boost this sense that this is a collaborative project, maybe, I don't know, for humanity, for society, for whatever, and have like open access to it and see if people are willing to contribute. Crowdsourcing is also possible.
Yeah. So we're running out of time a little bit, but there's one last thing I wanted to quickly ask everybody. Is there any message that you want to give to the audience to help them collaborate in the projects and to participate in the communities? Do you have any short message before I finish the session up?
Yeah, maybe I can give a short one and maybe boost people, because I think the future of tinyML is not tiny, but it's big and bright. And I'm very optimistic. And I think whenever there is will, there is power. And I can predict many applications of tinyML in healthcare, in agriculture, with tons of opportunities. So I think by actively contributing to the tinyML fields, we will not only ensure a better future for us, but also for all the generations to come. I think that we need really to direct our efforts like toward building tech that really matters, work on more and more projects that have societal impact, tech that aim at solving real problems and have impact on people's lives. And I think that we need to get more people involved, because tinyML, I see it as the future. So this is an invitation to have like many people join, and you can join my group. I would be happy to have you in the Moroccan.
I think this is a great positive statement to end on, Hajar. Thanks a lot. One of the things I really thought interesting of the whole panel discussion that we had is that even just having these five excellent panelists talk to each other, we see that there's potential collaboration starting between Africa and Europe. SoapBox potentially putting offices in Morocco. Greenwaves shipping boards to Hajar, who knows, to get more people engaged in the community. And I think it's very exciting just to see that people are getting together. Already you see that there's collaboration possibilities. And yeah, for everybody listening, join your tinyML meetup communities, collaborate with people, see if you can help grow the whole tinyML environment. I think that would be great.
One call, sorry.
One last comment.
I think the tinyML community should think of producing data for the use cases they think are interesting.
Yes.
and make them freely available. And this will stimulate the development, the actual development of those use cases.
Perhaps that's something we can pick up at the tinyML platform as well. Share more data sets,
Yeah,
share more
absolutely.
use cases, share more data, and democratize everything, right? Good. I think that's an excellent idea. Panelists, this was an incredibly interesting discussion. Thanks a lot. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that the audience listening to this enjoyed it. And I want to give a big thank you for all of the panelists. Gianmarco, Loic, Abbas, Patricia, Hajar, you've been excellent. Thanks a lot. And see you next time, I guess.
Thank you.
It was really a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ahmed, that was amazing. Thank you guys so much. I think everybody enjoyed the panel. It was very stimulating, and I think some new ideas or some new initiatives will be born from this panel.
I want to thank our sponsors that made this event possible. So the premier sponsors, Newton, working on automated tinyML. If you were there a few days ago, they had a keynote explaining what they're doing. Executive sponsors are ARM, Edge Impulse as well, and Qualcomm, Sentient, and then our platinum sponsors. We have Infineon and Reality AI. Gold sponsors are Latent AI, SensiML, and our silver sponsors are EMEA, Greenwaves, HOTG, Imagimop, GISO, Seed, and ST. And with that, I thank you very much for staying on till the very last end, the last day of the last session of the last day. And with that, I think we can close the forum for this year. Thank you everybody for contributing. Thank you, Andreas, for also moderating this session.